I'm joined here by Minister Pat Rabbitte, Minister for Communications, Energy and Natural Resources. From Brussels by Gay Mitchell, the Fine Gael MEP, by Sarah Carey, the Irish Times columnist, who also previously worked for Denis O'Brien, and Sam Smyth from the Irish Independent. First of all, Minister, your reaction to today's report?
Well, I agree that it's bad news for politics. I agree that it casts a shadow over public life. It's a devastating report from the point of view of the former minister, Michael Lowry, and it raises profound questions about the nexus between business and politics, between ministers and civil servants, and what that relationship ought properly be. It leaves the government with a huge agenda in terms of measures proposed by the tribunal that ought to be enacted. I'm glad that the programme for government for the new government, quite coincidentally, had committed to tackling, for example, corporate donations, had committed to a programme of reform more far-reaching than we've ever seen before. And, you know, this will certainly give an added impetus, I hope, on all sides of the House to enact that legislation.
What do you think it means for Michael Lowry? I mean, he's been elected a TD, but when you have a report like this talking about cynical and venal, about breathtaking instances of corruption, what's your own view about what this means for Michael Lowry, first of all, and also for Denis O'Brien?
Well, there are obviously legal actions, it would seem, contemplated, and I have to bear that in mind. I have to say that I'm very pleased that no blame attaches to the Rainbow government of the day, that the party leaders, including the cabinet, are expressly exonerated in the report.
It doesn't, may I just come in there? I mean, at the end of the day, you were a super junior minister, as was Gay Mitchell was also in that government. It doesn't say much for you, though, that an astonishing deal was done right under the nose of that government that you were part of.
Well, I think you have to understand, Miriam, that there was a process set up, a competition that was at the leading edge of best practice at the time. It was supposed to be the bee's knees. What happened was, as the tribunal has found, was that the seal of confidentiality was broken. And I think the comments are somewhat unfair about civil servants. What he says is that the civil servants were caught at the intersection of an improper relationship. You know, the process, had it been implemented as intended, was impeccable. What he says is that the seal of confidentiality was breached, and that information was, that the minister sought information, was given information, and that he passed on that information to the advantage of the company.
Let me bring Sarah Carey in next. Sarah, you've been in the studio with Sam Smyth and myself over the years discussing this. You're quite open. You used to work for Denis O'Brien. You have defended him. What's your reaction initially to Mr. Justice Moriarty today finding, after 14 years, that by his acts and decisions, Michael Lowry gave favour to Denis O'Brien and also gave payments up to about 900,000 sterling?
Well, Miriam, apart from working for Denis O'Brien, I was a witness at the tribunal. I had run-ins with them. I leaked some information about a donation Denis O'Brien made to the Progressive Democrats, and I denied that to the tribunal. And as one of my friends said to me today, Sarah, you're emotionally involved in this. So I understand that people will naturally and, you know, logically discount my opinion on it. But if I thought for a second, you know, and I just want to assure you on this, that there was anything about that licence that was unsound, I wouldn't be here tonight to defend it, and I wouldn't flinch from condemning anyone who was a party to that.
So why would Justice Moriarty say this?
So I heard all these phrases today, like you did, venal abuse of power and overreaching, you know, all this really inflammatory language. So when I went to the report and got to the sections where the actual substantive issue of what this so-called venal abuse of power was, I actually couldn't find anything that changed my mind about the point that I have been making all the time.
Can I just say, before I get on to what he said about you, Sarah, what you're saying is you reject what Justice Moriarty found?
What I say is that based on the sworn evidence at the tribunal of the 17 civil servants, of the senior counsel Richard Nesbitt, of the independent consultant Michael Anderson, of the staff from the Attorney General's office who swore that there had been no interference, I believe that evidence to be credible, and this is the important bit. In order for Michael Moriarty to have drawn the conclusions that he has drawn, he has had to completely discount that evidence.
And the 900,000 sterling to Michael Lowry?
Yeah, but when you go through all of those, it's kind of flimsy.
Okay.
And I would say this, as bad as the money trade looks, you have to go back then to the fundamental question,
I want to bring
was
Sam
there a
Smith on that.
benefit?
I just want to put something, because you brought it up yourself, obviously, that you were in the tribunal. But just to say what he said about you, in relation to the leaked confidential information, in relation to the political donations, when you were asked about this, he says the tribunal, you first lied and denied it, although you did later admit to it. The report describes what you did as irresponsible and not remotely justified by the explanation you provided.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of leaking going on, and I naively and stupidly got involved in that. But I don't think that changes the fundamental issue, which is that those civil servants swore under oath Michael Lowry had not interfered in the process, that ESAT Digiphone was the fair winner, and nothing that anyone draws about the conclusion can change that sworn
and one
evidence.
last question about yourself. The report also found that you used your Fine Gael connections to put you at the centre of a number of substantial donations of cash from Dennis O'Brien to Fine Gael, and in particular it quotes one letter from you to Phil Hogan, and it's very brief, because I think it says a lot about connections. It goes, "Dear Phil, please find enclosed a draft for the golf on the 16th. This was to be a Fine Gael fundraiser. I understand Dennis O'Brien has requested that there are no references to be made to his contribution at the event. Best of luck on the day." Doesn't that just say to people watching Sarah Carey, powerful people buying influence?
OK, look, we're talking about a golf fundraiser, and there was a donation of a few £1,000s to it. These kind of things were run off the mill for all political parties, and Dennis O'Brien was making donation to all political parties, Fianna Fáil, PDs, Fine Gael, everybody.
Okay.
You know, it's really peripheral to the main issue.
Sam Smith, first of all, your immediate reaction, you have lived and breathed this tribunal. What's your reaction, first of all, to that final report?
Well, it was more harsh than I thought it would be. It was very hard-hitting. And I must say, as someone who sat and listened to the evidence, I would not obviously concur with what we've just heard, because what Sarah seems to be saying is not only did they not do it, but that they wouldn't do it. Now, I wouldn't be so sure about that, having listened to the evidence through the years. I think some of the slurs that have been put today on Mr. Justice Moriarty, who I never heard anybody ever say anything other than he was an exemplary judge, a decent man, and you know, I think he gave this his best shot. Now, line up all those donations, all of the payments that were made, the fact that influence was brought to bear. I mean, you're looking at a scandal which in most countries, you know, would have either people on the streets. It is a shocking scandal.
But did you hear Dennis O'Brien was on the 6-1 News talking to Brian Dobson? He said he never gave a red cent, OK, as far as he is concerned, to Michael Lowry. Take people through brief. You know the 900,000 sterling, for instance, the Credit Suisse account in particular.
Yeah.
I mean, explain to people how that money apparently went to Michael Lowry from Dennis O'Brien, because isn't it meant to be a labyrinthine way? In other words, it wasn't direct, so it could be concealed.
Well, there was one movement of money which was at one time said to be for the sale of a townhouse in Spain. No deeds were ever produced for that house. Money went to, he was a trustee of Fine Gael, and the money went to him. He sent the money from an offshore account to an offshore account specifically set up by Michael Lowry to receive the money. That's the sort of way that these monies were moved. Now, I don't want to particularly attack anybody's character, but when you look at this, if this happened in any other country, there'd be outrage. And I really do believe that we have today seen what is the biggest scandal, corporate and political, in the history of the state. And no harm to Pat. I mean, I don't think for a moment that any minister other than Lowry was involved. The problem is it happened on your watch the last time you were there, and that is a difficulty.